Welcome back to another episode of 5 a.m. Theology. Rose, this week we got to Zelophehad's 5 daughters, 5 wise virgins who ask for the property of their father to be passed down to them. This is after the first generation has died off in the wilderness because of sinful unbelief. The second census of Israel has been taken, and they're about to enter the promised land, where the land is going to be divided up by tribe according to the size of the tribe.
I'll read the passage. Then drew near the daughters of Zelophehad, the son of Hepher, son of Gilead, son of Machir, son of Manasseh, from the clans of Manasseh, the son of Joseph. The names of his daughters were Mahlah, Noah, Haglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. And they stood before Moses and before Eleazar the priest and before the chiefs of all the congregations at the entrance of the tent of meeting, saying, Our father died in the wilderness. He was not among the company of those who gathered themselves together against the Lord in the company of Korah, but died for his own sin. And he had no sons. Why should the name of our father be taken away from his clan because he had no son? Give to us a possession among our father's brothers. Moses brought their case before the Lord, and the Lord said to Moses, The daughters of Zelophehad are right. You shall give them possession of an inheritance among their father's brothers, and transfer the inheritance of their father to them. And you shall speak to the people of Israel, saying, If a man dies and has no son, then you shall transfer his inheritance to his daughter. And that was Numbers 27, 1-7.
These women have been labeled by men as the first feminists, women who want to take over male roles, women who want to be equal to men in every way, and other things. They've been hailed by women as fighters for women's rights, powerful women, glass-shatterers, bold fighters for justice and equality. But are any of these takes on this story true? Is that really what's going on here? They were definitely living in a patriarchal society. Up until that time, inheritance would have passed to the male sons. If there were no male sons, the father's inheritance would have passed to the nearest male relative. Daughters were given a dowry at the time of their marriage, but they didn't share the inheritance. Daughters became part of the tribe that they married into. So here are 5 unmarried women about to lose everything. So Rose, what's the real story?
Well, Zelophehad's daughter's story bookends the whole last part of the book of Numbers, which is a pretty uplifting part of the book. The sinful, faithless first generation was dead. Everyone 20 years and older died in the wilderness. That 603,000 that we talked about last week, they're all dead.
Yeah.
Zelophehad's daughter's story is a story of faith. Even though they haven't entered the promised land yet, the daughters are not doubting. They're not saying, if we get into the land, can we have our inheritance? They're acting as if it's already a done deal. Everything we see between the bookends of their story shows a faithful Israel and what it looks like to follow God's commands in faith and in obedience.
And the women make it clear that they're only asking because there's no son. What's the reason that they stayed for it? They're zealous for the name of their father. Rose, isn't that what all believers should be zealous for? The name of our Heavenly Father?
Yes.
The daughters remind Moses and the rest of the congregation that their father didn't die because of the sin of being part of Korah's rebellion. That was bad, and they wouldn't have any inheritance because they were swallowed up in the earth. And they're saying, therefore, why should his name be blotted out? Why should his name be forgotten forever? This request is not about them, and God agrees to it. And he doesn't just give them permission to live on the land, he gives them the legal rights to the land. God made provision for the land to transfer to keep the name of the father. That was very important.
Yes. The bookend for their story comes at the end of the book of Numbers. The men of the tribe of Manasseh come to bring a concern about the women owning the land. If the women married outside the tribe, the land would eventually belong to whatever tribe they married into. So it's important for us to understand that God specifically divided the land up between the tribes. and each tribe was given a specific amount of land. They got the land God wanted them to get where God wanted each tribe to be. God gave Joshua a whole kind of map thing of where every tribe would be. God provided the means that the land would also belong to the original tribe or revert back to it, even if it had been leased or sold to someone else. God wanted the tribes to have the land he gave them. So the men who brought this issue up about what happens if they marry someone from another tribe, they weren't disgruntled patriarchs trying to keep the women in a lowly position. They rightly cared about God's promises and God's rule for the land, and their concern is legitimate.
It is. And this is what the Lord commands concerning the daughters and the thing the men bring. Numbers 36:6 says, "Let them marry whom they think best, only they shall marry within the clan of the tribe of their father." That would keep the inheritance of the people of Israel where it should be. And that's what God said was the right thing to do. And you know what, Rose? That's exactly what these 5 wise virgins did. They married within their father's clan.
And I love that God says, let them marry who they think is best.
Yes.
That would really have been radical in that
Yeah.
time when so many marriages were set up. But he's like, let them marry who they want within the clan.
Yep.
Neither the men nor the women were acting in an ungodly way. The women were not being feminists. They weren't trying to be pastors. They were
Nope.
legitimately trying to do what was right in the eyes of God. And the men were not super patriarchal jerks. Both had God's plan in their mind and God's promise. This is a story of faithfulness and following God's commands. What happens when we do that? Good things happen when we do that, not bad things.
Absolutely. Getting to this story in our reading coincided with a lot of talk that I've been hearing and reading about lately in the Reformed camp, especially. And that's super patriarchal and super judgmental men about women's roles in ministry. Rose, you and I have said it a couple times in this episode. Women should not be pastors. But I see so much judgment recently about men like Tom Askell allowing Allie Beth Stuckey to speak at the Founders Conference. There's judgment of any woman who's let one single word or syllable of theology come out of her mouth in public or be written down where a man might accidentally see it and learn something. That's unbiblical. There's a
It's
lot.
stupid.
It's stupid. There's a lot of judgment about women's motives. You can't judge someone else's motives. It's Jesus who will bring to light the motives of people. That's what it says in 1 Corinthians 4, verse 5. So maybe it's time that we take a step back, we stop some of this infighting, especially about these secondary issues, and we stop digging for trash on each other. Instead, why don't we start assuming that everybody's out for the best, everybody's out for God's glory? And if we're going to go after somebody, go after false teachers. There's more than enough of them to call out on a daily basis.
Not to mention other big issues we need to be fighting.
Absolutely. And we need to be together on it.
Yes.
So that's just how I'm feeling. When I got to this passage, it just coincided with a lot of stuff that had been building and I've been hearing.
And that's a good place to end for today. Have a blessed morning, everyone.